Hello, everyone, and welcome to session two. We'll be talking about product strategy and stakeholder management. Now, first of all, we have to talk about the product vision. Remember that in session one, we talked about how you have to map your idea or your assumptions to product vision. Now, what is product vision? Product vision details a product's purpose and future direction. It highlights the direction of the business and it shapes the development of the product strategy. However, crafting a roadmap is traditionally the responsibility of high level product executives. So, as an entry level, you most likely will not have to define or craft a product vision. However, once crafted, product managers shape the product initiatives and activities in line with the set product vision. Since this is not necessarily something that entry level product managers will do, I will just skip this. I will just not dwell on this too much. Now, same for defining the product strategy. Defining the product vision and the product strategy are usually responsibilities that are assigned to team leads, senior product managers, or your CEO, but it's not necessarily usually your responsibility. However, it is possible that you find yourself in a startup where you are the founding member of the startup, and then you will now be tasked with the responsibility of defining a product vision or defining a product strategy. Now, problem ideation, assumption mapping, future prioritization, and building and launching an MVP are activities that fall under the umbrella of product strategy. Hence, defining the product strategy comes first before even the concept development, which we talked about in previous session begins. So before you even start to do problem ideation, assumption mapping, prioritization, you first of all have to define product strategy because it forms the bedrock of all the other product tasks that will follow. Product strategy is an overview plan that describes what the business goals are for its products and how it intends to accomplish these goals. The product strategy should highlight who the target user personas for the products are, the target markets, who the direct competitors of the business are, and what the organization's business goals for the products are. This is because stakeholders outside of the product team, such as sales, will require the product strategy to guide their sales plan for the product. So, and defining it, you are also going to be documenting it, and it will be kept somewhere public where external stakeholders, such as sales, will be able to go back to it and inform themselves on what your product entails and what your strategy is, so they can also align their efforts with your strategy. Now, how do you define a product strategy? When drafting a product strategy document, first step is to document what the product version is. Remember that your product vision is always top of mind. You also have to highlight buyer personas. So you build personas on who your target audience will be. You highlight your target market, highlight direct competitors, and then your launch plan. Now, once you've done this, you now have to identify what your product goal is. And for each goal, ensure there's a metric attached to track success or failure rates of initiative, as well as timeline for completion. So essentially, your goal might be to get your first 1,000 users. Your metric will be 1,000 users using your products. Now, you cannot just leave it just so open ended. You have to attach a timeline to it. So, your product goal might look like get our first 1,000 users and you're in Q1. And so, your metric will be if we have 1,000 users by the end of Q1, that means you've been successful with your goal. And so, whatever your product goal is, in a defined timeline, you document it on your product strategy document, and then finally you translate your goals into business initiatives. So now you'll be identifying what business initiatives are that the team will break down into actionable tasks, which then guides the roadmap development. Now, what is a product roadmap? Product roadmap is the blueprint for product development. It is a visual plan that displays the strategic initiatives, deadline, goals and metrics, and features for a product against a specific timeline. Basically, it's just a document where you just document what your initiatives are, What's the deadline to executing your initiatives? What are your goals and metric for this initiative? What are the features that will be driving these initiatives? And then in what timeline do you think you should be executing or implementing this effort? Now, the product roadmap is fluid in that features can be added or removed from the plan depending on factors such as availability of adequate resources. Maybe one of your developer resigned, that affects timeline. You go back to your product roadmap and you edit it accordingly. Or maybe your resources for marketing excuse me, is not enough. You if it affects your timeline, you go back to your product roadmap and you edit your timeline. Also, business goals. If your business goals change or market conditions change or your product is pivoting and things are now different, you go back to your product roadmap and edit it. So this is what I mean by it's fluid. Considering that the roadmap is a document that entails the strategic information relevant to the product, stakeholders outside the product team will also be able to be privy to the roadmap. It's just like your product strategy document. Stakeholders outside of your, because you'll be requiring, it's not just for the product team. You'll be requiring efforts from other teams for setting effort for certain features. Let's say a product that requires legal effort, for example. You want to loop legal in very early. They should see your roadmap and see what timeline you are looking to execute so that they can also include it on their roadmap, because your roadmap now informs theirs. If your product is looking to launch in a different market by H2 and you need compliance, you need legal to do things for you, legal has to include it on their roadmap and they now have to start working towards achieving that goal for you. So, this is why your product roadmap is something that other stakeholders will have access to now, because the roadmap has multiple audiences outside of the core product team. You need to factor in your audience when you are drafting a product roadmap. Before we get into how to factor in your audience, tools for writing a product roadmap. Now, there are different templates that exist. Product Plan has a templates for writing a product roadmap. Aha has a template, Miro has a template, Notion has a template. You can also use Google Doc and MS Word to develop your product roadmap template from scratch. Your company might also have a specific template that they use, and if you are lucky that your company has a specific template, you just have to use that template to draft your product roadmap. Now, who are the product roadmap audiences? First of all, they are grouped into five. There's the product team, which is your core product team members, the product designer, the product marketer, developers, and product manager. Maybe there are multiple product managers on a product team. It's possible. Leadership team is also another category. When you're crafting a roadmap for leadership, it's best to connect business objectives to each item, because that's the only way they will draw value. So they don't just want to see a list of features, they want to see how your business objectives, how your future helps them achieve business objectives, and then you should show this on your roadmap, as well as highlight areas where more resources will be needed. So if you need one more developer, maybe you need a web developer because your product is going to be a web product. This is where you would document on this type of roadmap. You will document that this resources is needed for us to achieve this business objective. Remember, leadership, they are more concerned about business objectives. So you always have to tie product goals or product effort to business objectives. Internal customer facing team, these people are the sales team, customer success or marketing team. These are a subset of audiences that your product roadmap will entail. And then there's external audiences. This includes partners and investors. So if you have investors, you will also display your roadmap to them. External relevant stakeholders. For this set of people, communicating outcomes for each feature on the roadmap is best practice. So you know how for leadership, I said they just want to see business objective, or they are more interested in business objective and how your product effort tie into business objective. External audiences want to see outcomes. What does a budgeting feature mean for your product? They want to see that. You also need to also show business objective, but they want to see outcome. And then there's the development partners. This is usually for this type of audience are for products that serve API functions. So an API is basically a way for two or more software programs to communicate with each other. Think of it as a bridge connecting users to a specific service on a product. Now, businesses that prefer third party API integration to products might need to make their roadmap publicly available just so that your customers who are other products are able to see what is on your roadmap for a year. Now, types of roadmap. There are multiple types of roadmap, but we are going to address just three types of roadmap for the purpose of this um, program. You can go ahead and read on other types of roadmap and align with what your goals for your product is. But so one is the now, next, later roadmap. This type of roadmap presents a high level overview of what the team is working on now, what they intend to work on next, and what their future plans are. It shows what future the team is working on, why they are building that future, which is why they're building future is essentially what problem does it solve for users and how the work contributes to business goals or initiatives. The now, next, later roadmap is perfect for product teams or external stakeholders. Remember, your external stakeholders are your investors or partners that you might have. Future based roadmap entails using a future as a focal point of your roadmap. This is my preferred type of roadmap. A future based roadmap will also include future, company objective, timeline, status, and stakeholders. Now, I say this is my most preferred because you can show these five audiences now can benefit from a future-based roadmap because you include company objective, you include timeline, you include outcomes, you include status, and you can also include a section for if you need more resources. So it's very comprehensive. This future based roadmap is great for leadership stakeholders, product teams, and internal customer facing team. Then there's also the Kanban status based roadmap. This type of roadmap is used to visualize work at various stages of development, displaying status of work such as so if your feature is still in testing or in development on the Kanban status based roadmap, you display the status as opposed to a feature base where the status might just be completed or in progress. But on Kanban, you show if it's in testing, if it's in development, etc. This type of roadmap enables product teams to monitor progression of tasks closely. In addition to the product team, internal facing customer teams and external audiences can find relevance from these roadmaps. Many other type of roadmaps exist, like I said, and so selecting a roadmap is dependent on the audience and type of product in question. Now, stakeholder management. You are not just existing in silos or not just existing independently in your product team. You are interfacing with multiple stakeholders that you need for the success of your product. Now, who is a stakeholder? A stakeholder is an individual with an interest in something. Hence, effective stakeholder management involves understanding the needs and satisfying the expectations of everyone involved in the attainment of success for the product and managing them throughout the product life cycle. So, in order to effectively manage your stakeholders, you have to understand the needs of everyone involved, every stakeholder you're going to work with, and satisfy their expectations. Right now, this means that you have to be able to identify a stakeholder's relevance to your product because you will have a lot of stakeholders. You might have legal, you might be launching a feature where legal has to weigh in, finance is interested, sales are interested, marketing, CEO, and everybody does not have equal relevance for the success of your product. Hence, you have to be able to identify um, who are the people that have high interest and can have exact high power over your product, right? And then you have to now find a way to manage them. Just as different audiences exist for your roadmap, same way multiple stakeholders will exist for a particular product, ranging from internal teams such as sales and customer success to external facing teams such as investors and partners. And as a product manager, you will be sometimes be inundated with a list of future requests. Remember, people You're collaborating with people, you're forming relationships with people, and so they will feel comfortable or confident enough to bring future requests to your table. And so you also have to realize who is a stakeholder and who is just, a part of the crowd, and be able to segment on how to manage their feedback. If your CEO is telling you that they have an idea for your product, you cannot just say, no problem, I'll put it on backlog. But if somebody, maybe a colleague who doesn't have any stake in your product, says, I think you should implement this product, you can confidently say this will go on the backlog. No problem. Thank you for offering. But for the CEO, you have to let them see that you value their inputs because they are a high interest, high power stakeholder. And I will explain this very soon. Now, to test whether someone fits the bill of a stakeholder, ask yourself whether that person has veto power over your team or product, or can prevent your product from going live. If a person um, has veto power over your team, that is, they can exert some form of influence over your product team. They can switch things up, or they can prevent your team or your product from going live, or you need their approval for resources or budget allocation. That is a stakeholder, right? Or they can prevent your product from going live, or when your product goes live, they can prevent or impact how users interact with your product, or impact the success of your product. That's also a stakeholder. Now, once you've identified who a stakeholder is and isn't, you need to categorize your stakeholders into a grid matrix known as Mendel's stakeholder matrix. And according to the placement of each stakeholder on the matrix, you align your stakeholder management efforts accordingly. Now, this is what a Mandela's matrix is. This section is high interest, high power. So this grid indicates power, and this grid indicates interest. Now, the people here are high interest, high power. The people here are low interest, but they also have high power. So they might not be very interested in your products, but they have high power. You keep them satisfied. For the people who are high interest and high power, you manage them closely. For people who are high interest, but they are low power, you keep them informed, their subjects, and you keep them informed. And then for people who are low interest, low power, they're the crowd, and you just monitor them with minimal efforts. In fact, you might not even require a lot from you. You just observe them. Now let's address them one after the other. Remember, players are in this section, so they are high interest and high power. Now, stakeholders in the players categories are high power, high interest stakeholders, which means they have high stakes in the product and possess veto power over the product and product team. The way to manage these people is to actively engage them with product or team updates. So you have to consistently let them know where the team is at, what the team is working on, how much progress the team has had. Usually they might join your product stand-up meetings, and so they will or they might reach out to you personally. But it's important, if they're not reaching out to you, it's important to regularly update them on the progress of your team, because they have a high degree of power and influence over the success of your product and your team. Um, People who fit into this players category are your customers, your CEO, your COO, your managers. They all fall under the players category. Now, customers, you might be wondering, customers cannot necessarily impact my product team. They don't have veto power, but they can impact the success of your product, because if your customers consistently give you negative feedback, your product will tank. So they are players. You manage them very closely. That's why you prioritize their feedback and you try to satisfy them. Now, context setters are, they are high power. So these are the context setters. They are high power but less interested in your activities. Now, a way to manage this set of stakeholders are just by sharing just enough information to keep them satisfied but not overwhelmed. So they might not need as much details that you will share with players. Maybe just a high level overview or an executive summary of where the product or what stage the product development is at. Investors and financial stakeholders are examples of context setters. There's also subjects. Now, the subjects are stakeholders who have high interest in your product but wield low power over you and your team. So these are the subjects. They are interested, but they wield low power over you and your team, and so you manage them by providing adequate information to just satiate their interest, and you address any complaints or feedback they might have. Industry analysts or employee groups, such as maybe if you are working in an industry where there are employee group unions, for example, there are examples of stakeholders that are categorized under subjects. Now, crowds, they are low interest, low power. They are not really interested in your product. They're just observing detachedly, and they don't have power over your product activities. Hence, you manage them just by observing, and examples include just the general public, people that don't necessarily fall into your target audience, so just the general public and your competitors' customers. So that's it for stakeholder management. Next week, we'll be talking about prioritizing framework and product metrics and how to track product metrics. See you then.